lovely and darling viewers, it's Jen here at Check Her Joy. This time I'm reviewing the 12 Doctors of Christmas. This is a Doctor Who short story collection that has stories from the 1st through 12th Doctors that all center around Christmas. Each of the 12 stories is told by a different author and it has a different illustrator. There are full color illustrations, one per each short story, and they are awesome. I love that about this edition. I took this one out of the library, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to track this down and buy one myself. Because this art is amazing. So, love it. There's also a bunch of different illustrators, so different art styles as well. Okay, so there's the art. Each of these is a different doctor with different companions, and they tell different stories. The first one in here is All I Want for Christmas, which is written by Jacqueline Rayner. It is a first Doctor story with Barbara, Ian, and Vicky. The group arrives in England on Christmas Eve in 1963, and Barbara and Ian have not been home yet since they got kidnapped by the Doctor back in episode 1. They are missing Earth, they are missing being in the 60s, they are missing Christmas. And so they get to this break and this chance to not be in London, but to be in this small town and to get to have a 60s English Christmas. Everything seems wonderful at first, but they find out that things are a little bit off and things aren't necessarily what they seem to be. And honestly, the ending actually caught me off guard because I thought it was something different than it actually was. So I loved this one. It's also narrated from Barbara's perspective the entire time. And we get to hear her memories about Christmas's past and about her father. I loved it. It's definitely one of my favorites. The second story is A Comedy of Terrors by Colin. This is a second Doctor story with Jamie and Zoe as his companions. They land on a spaceship in the future. They are mistaken for this troupe of actors that are supposed to be coming to present this Shakespearean story, which is actually not real Shakespeare. It's based off of a couple of plays, jumbled together and then put into a pantomime. So not strict Shakespeare, sorry guys. But the real issue in this is that there is a princess on board who needs to go to this planet and get documentation of her birth to prove that she's actually a royal. And also gain this half a ring that was her father's pendant that also went missing. So they end up helping her gain her throne. But of course there's threats and violence and political stuff happening that would stop that. Story 3, The Christmas Inversion by Jacqueline Rayner. This is the third Doctor, Joe Grant and Mike Yates as their companions. They travel to London in 2006 and they actually run into Jackie at the Powell Estates. Not long after the Christmas invasion happened, the 10th Doctor's first episode. And Jackie is confused because, okay, you're the Doctor who changed his face, I just saw that happening, but what do you mean you don't know what happened to Rose and you don't remember Rose? Do you just forget her? And she's like, oh, you're a previous version of the Doctor and haven't met Rose yet, but how come I've never heard of these other companions that you're traveling with now? And so it's really about the Doctor and his relationship with the companions and why they leave him. And really Joe and Jackie both struggling with what's going to happen at the end, what happens to the companions after they leave the Doctor, because they don't travel with him forever. So that one was sweet. It's also all set around Christmas. The fourth story is Three Wise Men by Richard Dungworth. It is the 4th Doctor, but he is traveling with K9, and they encounter the crew of Apollo 8. So Apollo 8 was one of the early Apollo missions where they're just learning how to get into orbit and stuff, and it's the first one, I think, that orbits the moon, but it's definitely one that happens on Christmas Eve. And so when they're in the dark side of the moon, they can't broadcast and communicate back and forth with NASA. So while they are on the opposite side of the moon, they encounter the Doctor, and they're struggling with okay, what do we do? This seems impossible, but it's clearly happening to us. We can't communicate with NASA. We can't get instructions. We're on our own. We got to figure this out. I loved everything about it. I spent the summer reading up on the Apollo missions, so I knew about Apollo 8, so getting to see this in Doctor Who format was so much fun for me. So I loved this one. It's one of my favorites. Maybe my favorite story in the entire book. So great. And it has Jim Lovell in it. He was the commander of that mission, but he was also the commander of Apollo 13, so he gained some notoriety from a later mission, and the Doctor kind of references it without spoiling it for him, which was also great. The 5th story is Sontar's Little Helper by Mike Tucker. This has the 5th Doctor, Tegan and Turlough in it. Torlo. I can never pronounce his name, sorry. They are on a spaceship. It is Christmas Eve, but they're encountering robots and Sontarans, so it doesn't really feel Christmassy. It just kind of happens at Christmas. Sorry, guys. At least I didn't think it felt Christmassy. Anyway, they encounter a Sontaran who is fresh and new and needs to prove himself, so he challenges Torlo to a space battle, one-on-one combat. If Torlo wants to live, he needs to beat the Sontaran. If the Sontaran beats Torlo, then he gets to go join the Sontaran army and become a fighter. So yeah, that was a story that was in here. It definitely wasn't one of my favorites. The sixth story is Fairy Tale of New York by Gary Russell. This one has the Sixth Doctor and Mel. They encounter a space hospital, like a spaceship, but is populated, run by the nuns of Catkind, the one from Neworth. The Sixth Doctor has this affinity for cats and always wears like a little cat button pin thing, and so it was fun to see him interacting with Catkind. We also find a group of human children who are in quarantine and are terrified because some of the kids are going missing. And they don't know what's happening. They don't know why they're on the ship. They don't know why they're sick. They don't know what exactly is happening. There's not communication. And so the Doctor and Mel start investigating to find out what is actually going on. Because they're not allowed to see the parents anymore. It's also Christmas. And they just want to see Father Christmas. So the Doctor takes a moment to play Santa. This is also a really great story, by the way. The Grotto by Mike Tucker is a Seventh Doctor story with Ace. They track a crashing ship into New York, and its survivor escapes and starts kind of attacking everybody, going into like hunter mode. But he does it in the Macy's department store during the Christmas season and is hiding amongst all the Christmas trees. And so we've got that Christmas feel in the background, and Ace commenting about American Christmases, which I think is a bit unfair because you're in the middle of Macy's. Like, this is the most commercial place you could be at Christmas. I don't think it's fair commentary on the rest of us in America. The Ghosts of Christmas Past by Scott Handcock is an Eighth Doctor story. He's traveling by himself in the TARDIS. It's in the middle of the Time War, and he's really struggling with this being alone thing and having to fight in a fight that he didn't really want to be in. And he ends up trapped in this 1 second of midnight between Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So like that 1 second where it's about to become Christmas. And he's stuck orbiting Earth so he can see it, but he is stuck in the TARDIS and can't get out of it to go, like, see and visit people. So he's basically stuck in his own head, remembering Christmases and companions and wondering what other people are doing, wondering about Susan, his granddaughter, who's off on Earth. So this one was a very internal monologue about the Doctor and exploring who he is and how he relates to his companions, and his feelings about a time that's meant to be spent with friends and family when you're completely alone. So I liked this internal struggle. But there's not, like, he's trying to figure out how to get out of the time second, but there's not really, like, a monster or anything. Although there does seem to be a ghost on the TARDIS that's kind of lurking. Red Bicycle by Gary Russell is a Ninth Doctor story. We see the Ninth Doctor leaving Rose for a second to go give her a Christmas surprise. Rose told him the story about how she had this row with Jackie for months because Rose didn't get this red bicycle when she was 12. But Jackie couldn't afford it, but Rose at that time didn't really understand that concept. So the Doctor decides that he is going to go give Rose this bicycle for Christmas. He's going to go play Santa. But things go awry, somebody steals the bicycle, and the Doctor needs to track it down. And things start just getting more and more complicated. It was a good thought, but it kind of becomes a ton of work. Loose Wire by Richard Dungworth is a 10th Doctor story in which he encounters the Wire in the 21st century. So the Wire is that one from the Queen Coronation episode. It's that creature that lives in technology and, like, sucks people's faces out. That's the one he encounters, and he does it in the 21st century where everything is Bluetooth enabled and Wi-Fi and everything is connected, appliances, cars, speakers. He encounters this girl who gets a cell phone for Christmas and starts video chatting with this guy that she thinks is Justin Bieber, but of course it's not, because that would be ridiculous. It's actually the Wire trying to, like, trick her, and the Doctor having to, like, rush in and save the day. It was really interesting to, like, contemplate the Wire and, like, our technology where everything, like, how do you beat it when it can just jump between your phone to the radio to the dishwasher and back, like just everything. Okay, The Gift by Scott Handcock is an 11th Doctor story in which the Doctor tracks a loose alien into this family's house on Christmas. He shows up as a caroler, and like the mom mistakes him for a caroler, and like it has adorable scenes where he's like, "Oh, you don't have any change? That's okay. I got plenty. People have been giving me money. Here you go." So he also runs into this girl, and the two of them trace the alien back to its homeworld because it stole some of the Christmas presents, and the girl is freaking out. So the Doctor helps her get it back, but she gives the alien just one present. But their trip to this other world ends up changing it and introducing Christmas to this world. And it's really, it's fascinating. It's really all about what the spirit of Christmas is and about giving and receiving. And I loved it so much. And then the last story is Persistence of Memory by Colin Brake. This is a 12th Doctor story in which he encounters this 14-year-old boy in the late 70s. And the boy is completely obsessed with mysteries, trying to figure out Loch Ness and all this stuff. And he encounters the Doctor, figures out he's a time traveler, chases him into the TARDIS. And the Doctor is like, "Well, I'm bored. Clara's off doing this thing. Sure, I'll take you. Where do you want to go?" So they go to Loch Ness to investigate this slew of new Nessie sightings, and it's the kid's Christmas gift. And it references back to a couple of different Doctor Who stories, both classic and new, so I loved it, but I don't want to spoil it for you. So, on the whole, I really loved this collection of Doctor Who stories. I loved exploring these different worlds, getting to know these characters better, really getting to explore who the Doctor is and his relationship with his companions and the people that he cares about most. So I do highly recommend it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Some of the stories were a little bit less interesting than others, but some of them were absolutely stunning. So I do recommend this one if you love Doctor Who and Christmas. Let me know in the comments below if you read this one, if you've read other Doctor Who short story collections. I will post links down below. So peace out. I love you guys. Keep reading, and Merry Christmas. Bye.